Before we dive into today's special episode, I just want to take a moment to speak from my heart. Creating this podcast, these conversations, these deep dives, this soul work, it's something I pour so much time and energy and love into. I really feel a purpose here. And right now, it's unmonetized. It's truly a labor of love. If this podcast has been nourishing you, if it's brought you comfort, inspiration, or maybe just a reminder that you're not alone in your journey, I'd be so grateful if you could help keep Serenade to the Soul alive and thriving. These are a few simple steps, beautiful ways to do just that. You could subscribe so you never miss an episode, rate and review the podcast. It really helps others find this community. You could share it with a friend who might need it. And if you feel called, you could drop a little something, a little love into the PayPal piggy bank. The links are in the show notes. Truly, any amount helps. It all goes toward keeping this space sustainable so we can grow and thrive together. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this journey with me. I really, truly couldn't do this without you. Now, let's get into today's episode. Welcome to Serenade to the Soul, a yoga and wellness experience. I'm your host, JackieOM. Hello, friends. Let's welcome Mary Beth Bender to Serenade to the Soul today as we talk about Astrowellness. Mary Beth is a professional astrologer and yoga teacher. She's the founder of Holistic Astrology and Twist Kids Yoga, her two energetic babies. I had the pleasure of meeting Mary Beth when she was my lead trainer for my kids' yoga teacher training. And when I found out she also was an astrologer or is an astrologer, it just lit me up. I just love her passion for her areas of expertise and how she's able to weave her two loves into one unified form. I'm especially thrilled to get to chat about astrology because astrology is like my long lost friend I welcomed back into my life actually earlier this year with a set of fresh eyes and spirit. I first got into it a decade or so ago when I was embarking on my own personal journey of self-discovery. It began with psychology, particular with Carl Jung, and he saw the value of symbolic language in astrology and how we can study archetypes and the human psyche through that. But the general population really only knows about their sun sign. But there's so much more astrology than meets the eye. So, Mary Beth, well, let's get into it. What is your origin story to yoga and astrology?
Yeah, so hi, I'm excited to be here and talk about these things. So astrology, I would say, came before yoga. When I was like around 8 years old, starting to read my horoscope, just of course, like you said before, only focusing on the sun sign. But I have one of those birthdays that's known to be on the cusp. So I was always quite confused what my actual astrological sign was. So I always just kind of followed, what it said that day, in that particular newspaper or magazine, whatever it said for November 22nd, I just kind of read, right? Like I was just learning how to read a horoscope. And then fast forward 12 years later, gosh, I can't believe that kind of timing happens between 8 and 20. My dad suddenly passed away. And right before he passed away, I want to say just a couple days before he passed away, I was on Christmas vacation from college. I went to college out in University of Arizona, and I was from Ohio. And so I was in Ohio for my Christmas vacation, and I met up with a couple of my friends from the boarding school that I attended in high school up in New England. One of them was from Ohio, and so we all met up, and since it was around the holidays, one of them gave me a Christmas present, and the Christmas present was an astrology book. And it was an astrology book that I had never, the type of astrology book that I had never seen before, because it went beyond the sun sign. So it started, that particular book is what opened my eyes, but I didn't really start reading the book until, so my dad passed away within like those 2 days of meeting up with those friends. And it was during Christmas break. And it was early enough in the Christmas break where I actually went back to school at University of Arizona on time for the winter, semester. Of course, it was hard, being that I was grieving, but my mom, of course, told me that's what my father would want. And so in that process of grief, in the age of a freshman in college, of course, I was still going out and having fun as I could. I've always been a more introspective type of person, where this astrology book really started to take me inward. But it wasn't like a pleasant sense of inward for me, because at that age, the process of self-discovery was quite scary for me. And I was unraveling things through my studying of astrology in this book about myself that, were hidden within myself that I wasn't really ready to kind of like shine the light on or accept about myself. So it was actually not like an easy process, but I was still fascinated, completely fascinated with the understanding of astrology. And then, so because my father had passed away, and because grief can turn into, depression and other, sort of mental health crises, I discovered yoga. And I discovered yoga at a time when I really needed that as my medicine, rather than what I was using as more like Western medicine to deal with it. And so that's when I really, of course, went deeper into my journey of self-discovery and started to, of course, get curious about a lot of things around, consciousness and higher consciousness in the universe, so on and so forth. And I guess, eventually the two came together, where, the deeper I studied yoga and started discovering things like about Ayurveda and, other, types of yoga, or, yoga is kind of like connected to lots of different things. I learned that there is a connection. So, of course, in yoga, it's going to come kind of more from that Vedic tradition. And we typically look at, more of that Western tropical astrology. So, of course, when I was learning about sort of the connection between the two, it was coming from more of that Vedic perspective. And so it was really through that understanding more about it through that Vedic perspective, where I started to see more of what I call the Astrowellness and the connection, because in ancient times, astrology was used in lots of different, places, like even in the medical fields. And so they would use remedies, right? Like they would, or like mantras and so on and so forth. So it just really opened me up to a new curiosity that has taken me to where I am now. And of course, I will share, eventually the self-discovery side of the astrology didn't freak me out as much, because I'm putting them together with yoga, right? And so it's been a beautiful process for me, and just allowing myself to become who I'm meant to become through that understanding, and not be so afraid of the shadow and the more, because we all have ugly aspects, right? And astrology is going to show us that.
Yes.
So it was a really good place for me to start to find that place of self-love and compassion for myself, and what we would call metta, practicing loving kindness towards self and others.
Yeah.
And so I would say, that would be like a big part of my origin story of yoga and astrology.
Yeah, I love that, Mary Beth, because you're so right. When you start on the process of self-discovery, it is scary because you're going into the unknown parts of yourself. And I love how yoga came into your life just when you needed it to give you that compassionate, loving support you need through what might become, something scary. And who knows? For our listeners, can you explain what Vedic astrology is?
Yeah, so Vedic astrology is going to be coming from India, where yoga came from. And so, just kind of in like a basic terminology,
Mm-hmm.
it's a completely different system than what we call tropical astrology. We could even take the word Vedic astrology out and just call it sidereal astrology. And then that kind of takes away even the understanding of the Vedic tradition and, so on and so forth. And so really how a Vedic astrologer would calculate one's birth chart in a different way than a tropical astrologer is they're actually calculating it from, and I know this makes sense to a lot of people, from where the actual constellations are in the sky at the moment of our birth. So if you were to get a telescope out and look up into the sky, and you would actually, like today, we'll probably talk about the summer solstice, right? The sun moving from Gemini into Cancer. In the Vedic tradition, or the sidereal, it's actually still Gemini season. So it's calculated where everything in the tropical chart is subtracted about 23 and a half, 24 degrees. So it can be confusing to a lot of people because they're like, wait a second, I've grown up to think that, I am a Cancer sun and you're telling me I'm a Gemini sun. So it's a completely different system. But of course, with Vedic astrology, it goes in deeper where it does bring in the yogas. And it is actually called, I never know if I can say this correctly, Jyotish, Jyotish, which basically just means light. And so the way it's interpreted is even very different than a tropical astrological, chart would be interpreted. So it does get very spiritual. But I also don't really sometimes and sorry to any listeners who are big fans of Vedic astrology. I do love Vedic astrology and I do look at my Vedic astrology, but there's a lot of doom and gloom in it so I feel like a lot of things are faded and astrology can show us, but it's like in Vedic astrology, it's like, well, if you don't feed this cow and, go and wear red or do this mantra, yantra, then you feel like you're going to be doomed. Right.
Yeah.
And so I just can't, resonate with
I hear
that, with
you. I hear
astrology,
you. Yeah.
where I totally believe in fate and remedies, like I call with Astrowellness. I've been on that side of being freaked out by astrology where, it's just consciousness. And we don't have to feel like, oh, if I don't feed that cow or if I, don't wear red on Mars Day, it's something, bad is going to happen. So that can be a difference too. I don't know if I even answered the question correctly, but
No, that's fine. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I remember because I learned about astrology through a book too. It's called The Only Astrology Book You'll Ever Need. And it really did a good job, but I lended it out to a friend and never got it back. So that happens to books.
Yeah, that was actually that was my second book I
Oh
learned
yeah.
astrology. Yeah,
Oh,
so that's a
good.
good
Yeah.
one. I like
Yeah.
hearing
It was
because
a
that's
good
the book I
one.
send people like the reference to.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
link that in the show notes for sure if you are interested in learning about your personal astrology. So that one, yeah, that one's focused on the Western tropical. And I remember at some point I got curious about Vedic and it was just, whoa, too different from what the foundation of knowledge that I already built. So I sort of just, I was like, I'm just going to turn my eyes back to what I know. So yeah, but I do love how you mentioned that it's ancient and they used to use it, in the medical field and with doctors. Can you explain to us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so this is very fascinating to me, especially because we can recognize even some of the symbolism today. I mean, I'm not in the medical field, but some of this is definitely obvious. So, many, 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 many moons ago, your doctor was also an astrologer. So
That's
if
just so
you
cool to me.
I know. So if you had, let's say, a chronic headache, or you were dealing with some sort of health issue, and you go to the doctor, just like, we would go today, and they do the checkup, they're not only going to have your medical history and your medical chart on file with them, but they're also going to have a copy of your natal chart. So it's almost like the doctor wanted, it was just as important for the doctor to know your time of birth as it was for them to know your weight or your, gender and so on and so forth. Because the natal chart, it's this map, right? It's this blueprint of the sky, or I like to call our first baby picture in that moment that we're born. But what it can also do is it can show you predispositions for, it can be like a map of your health. So predispositions for your health. And so the doctor would be able to, let's say it's that chronic headache. Well, Aries rules the head. So the doctor would look in the natal chart to see where there's maybe Aries in the chart, whether you're born with Aries, like strong placements of Aries, or that would especially, like highlight and make sense as to why that's coming up. And then maybe any transits, which, are just the astrological weather coming around your natal chart that might be triggering something for that Aries to be experiencing, these migraines or these chronic headaches, because that would be a condition associated with Aries. And so it's just fascinating because it's like the doctor would be able to diagnose through the natal chart, through your symptoms, and then they would give out remedies. So remedies, such as herbs and, even like, walking could be a remedy for something, right? We all know that like a good walk. And so astrology, is so much about timing. And so, I mean, they would even like in medical astrology maybe say, oh, take this herb for your chronic headache at the Mars, because that's the ruler, the ruler of Aries, at the Mars hour.
Mm.
So they really looked very closely at what was going on in nature and the sky, and then of course our bodies. It's all connected.
So interesting. So you just talked about the Mars hour. Can we go into planets and the hours that they rule and how we can understand the energetics of a given day?
Yeah, so there's something called planetary hours. I'm not too much of an expert on this one, but I can say in a simple way that each hour, it's more than an hour. It might be like an hour and a half or so, let's just say. But let's just, imagine that each hour of the day is ruled by a planet. And so how it can really make sense is that So like, for example, today's Friday. Friday is ruled by Venus. So it's Venus Day. And when the sun rose, so when, it was like sunrise or dawn earlier today, it would have begun the day, because that's, the sun beginning the day. It would have begun the day at the Venus hour because it's Venus Day.
So it changes with every day. Yeah.
So with every day, the sunrise is going to be ruled by the planetary energy that rules that day. So like the moon would be Monday,
Yeah.
Mars would be Tuesday, Mercury would be Wednesday, Thursday's Jupiter Day, Friday's Venus Day, Saturday is Saturn Day, Sunday is Sunday. And what's really interesting, just speaking about the planetary hours, speaking of it being Venus Day, this isn't something I thought about when we scheduled this podcast a couple of weeks ago, but I did look before I got on the podcast because I wanted to know what planetary hour it was or what planet was going to be ruling the 3:00 hour. And it's Venus, which is the ruler of the day. And so I love that, right?
I love that too.
And then following, I think it's like closer to 4:00, Mercury will rule the hour. And so, and we're only working with the visible planets here with the planetary hour. So it's never going to be like Pluto hour or Neptune hour or Uranus hour. It's only going to go up to Saturn.
Okay.
Okay. So that's like the 7 visible planets. But you can actually download an app. It is called, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. It is called Planetaro. So it's like planet and then ARO. So you can actually download an app and you have to type in your location of, where you're living or where you're traveling, because it's not always going to be the same. The sun doesn't rise at the same time in Charlotte, obviously, as it does, let's say, in Los Angeles, right? Like there's going to, so it's not going to be generic just to the day. It's going to be location based, just as all astrology is location based. But it's very interesting because each planet does rule certain things, right? Like Venus hour is a great hour to, maybe like focus on beauty and things that relate to Venus. Maybe a good time to make art, right? So each hour would also give you a clue into how you can structure your day, how you can, kind of plan those hours of the day.
Yeah,
I mean, we can't control that. Like we can't, right? Like, I wish that, I could align that closely with astrology. But I will say it's always helpful for me before I go teach a class or do an event or work with a client or do the podcast type thing. What hour, what planetary energy is going to be the ruler of the hour? And I mean, I've even observed like a dinner with, a couple family members recently. And I told one of my sisters what might happen in that hour. And we witnessed something, and it's just like, it's fascinating. It's very fascinating.
It really is. And it's like you said, we can't control everything, but the things that are important that you want to plan for, you could like look and peek ahead to what energies would support whatever your intention is, just to make whatever you're doing more intentional and with purpose. And I'd even say it'd support manifesting and the things that you want to create and experience. I just love that. And it's so funny that we're talking about the Venus hour, because earlier today I was like, I wonder if Mary Beth looked up the planetary ruler of the hour we were going to meet, because you mentioned that before, and it just crossed my mind. But I will also link that app in the show notes for those of you who are interested. I'm going to download it too, because this is just fun. This is fun for me.
It's fun. I mean, I don't obsess and look at it every hour, but it is helpful. All these things are helpful in understanding, just as you would want to understand if you were preparing for an adventure or a trip and you want to know, okay, what's the weather going to be like in the mountains this weekend?
Mm.
It's just trying to understand the weather. You can't
Mhm.
control it, but being aware just allows it to just flow the way it's supposed to. It's all just consciousness, just
Yes.
in our face.
Yes. Yes. So going from there, let's talk about the days of the week and how we can approach our yoga practices according to the days of the week.
Absolutely. Yeah. So as mentioned, you can look at the days of the week and understand the planet that rules that day. And since, we're talking a lot about, yoga, for example, we can approach our yoga practice with the planetary ruler of the day. And it's fascinating. So let's start with Saturday. Saturday is ruled by Saturn. So Saturn is a planet that has to do with discipline and maturity and responsibility. And it's a more serious planet. It's the planet that we have to get serious with in our life, especially at 28 to 30.
Mm-hmm.
So a Saturn day practice, an ideal Saturn day practice would be one like I associate yin yoga as being an example of
Mm.
a good Saturday practice. But
I never would have thought that.
it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be yin either, but just a more think like the chakras as well. So a more root chakra based practice, right? So one that's very grounding. One that the long holds helps you kind of cultivate that same sense of patience that we have to cultivate with Saturn, because Saturn is slow moving. Saturn, brings delays. Saturn brings, um, it can bring restriction. And so think also even with your breath, with a Saturday practice, it would be one of those breaths where you breathe in, let's say for a 4 count, and then you breathe out, and let's say you breathe out for a 6 count. So it's going to be that more extended pause between the exhale and the inhale. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's my understanding of it. So yeah, you can think more like root chakra based
Mm-hmm.
practices. If that's probably helpful for you, but for any of the listeners who have an understanding even of
Yeah.
the chakras.
I get what you're saying, why yin might be good, because that a lot of people avoid yin due to those long holds and having to sit with themselves. On the outside, it looks like nothing's going on, but in the inside, you're sitting with the storm of your thoughts. And, our minds aren't just ours. It's a blend of frequencies and energies and memories and the collective unconscious. And so just to sit with yourself in a posture that's already poking your edges, and that requires a lot of discipline to begin with. So, yeah.
Yes, it's the discipline right
Yeah.
there. Um, and then so Saturday, and then we have Sunday.
Mhm.
So Sunday, it's the sun, and the sun is warm. The sun, so think the basics, sun salutations. We want a practice that is going to be warming, a practice that's going to increase vitality, as the sun represents vitality, a practice sun salutations has that active, because the sun is traditionally ruled by the astrological sign of Leo, and Leo's a fire sign, and it's at its highest manifestation. known as exalted in the sign of Aries, which is another fire sign. So this is a good day more for a more fiery warming practice.
Like a hot 26 or Shanga or power flows or anything heated and more active,
Yes, yes,
muscular,
yes,
sweating. Yeah.
yes. And can you see too why in the Ashtanga tradition they don't even technically practice on Saturdays?
Right. I was
The
gonna,
rest day.
yep. Yeah.
Right. And like when
Yeah.
I started to make sense of, because Ashtanga was my very first practice when I was, when I was in my early 20s and did it for a long time. And so now it makes sense to me why there was no Saturday practice. Um, okay. So we'll
I
go back
wondered
to
about that. I'm glad you mentioned that because I
that's
did hear
my,
about
I
it.
mean, nobody said that, but
Yeah.
from that astrological place, it makes sense to
Yeah.
me.
It makes
Yeah.
sense for
Yeah.
sure. And Ashtanga does have a lot of astrology rooted into its practice, correct? Like,
Yeah, I kind of haven't really dived that because I kind of broke away from Ashtanga
oh, right.
um,
Yeah.
when I started
From,
getting more into this,
yeah.
what I was talking about with my practice earlier.
Yeah. Ashtanga is very rules. There's a lot of rules and constrictions in tradition, but as it made its way to the West, it's been modified to fit our lifestyle
Yeah.
and preferences.
I'm sure there's some Saturn elements to it too, but
Mm-hmm.
it definitely feels more Sunday to me. And
Mm-hmm.
then let's move on to Monday.
Yeah.
Monday is ruled by the moon. So when we think of the moon is our, it's that part of us that needs nurturing. It's that part of us that it's our emotional landscape. It's where the sun is the conscious self, the moon is the unconscious self. And in our, kind of setup in our world, Monday marks the first day of the week as far as the work week goes. And most people dread Monday, I feel like, because they're tired and they just need
Mhm.
more rest. So my idea is always that we need to change it where Sunday and Monday are weekend days.
Yeah. It makes more sense.
Where Sunday we play in the park, and where Monday we rest and read and get ready
Mm-hmm.
for
For
like,
Tuesday,
yeah,
Mars Day, Action
yeah.
Day. Yeah.
So a Monday practice may look like a more restorative practice. This might be when you get, your bolster out and lay in Supta Baddha Konasana for 20 minutes, or you put your legs up the wall. You do a practice that like Saturday with the long holds in yin, but that is more, yin isn't so restful for
No,
a
it's
lot of
not.
people,
No,
right?
it's
Like,
not. Yeah.
but restorative is. There's
Restorative
that
is.
different, right?
Mhm. And then a nidra too. Everything that you were saying to me, also a nidra yoga practice when you're talking about nurturing and going inward and the unconscious, because yoga nidra brings you into the theta brainwave state, between sleep and wake, where you activate those highly creative parts of self and unconscious parts of self that you can receive a lot of information that serves your health. It's part of the reason why I love that practice, because of the place you go in to your brain through the waves and you feel it in your heart. Yeah, I love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because, yoga nidra is always extra beneficial after a restorative practice, I feel like, because
Yes.
or
Yeah.
at least in
Coupling
my
the two.
experience with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
they go well together.
Yes.
So yeah, that's going to be, an ideal practice for a Monday. Because then like, we started to say before, then we get up on Tuesday and it's Mars Day. And Mars is like where we take action. Mars is fiery. Mars is, one of the bully planets in the chart. Saturn and Mars, they're both known to be the malefics in astrology.
Yeah.
So they wreak havoc in our lives. And Mars is the god of war. And so, you think you've seen like the movie Inside Out and you see Anger, the character Anger, he's red and he's like, got the angry look about him. That's very Mars. Mars is where we have our anger. And so Tuesday is going to be like similar to Sunday, where we want a more fiery practice. We want more of that cardio based yoga practice. And especially, in thinking about like warrior poses, that's very Mars. So
So Mars.
this is where where Ashtanga can come back into conversation, and those sun bees where you're doing the warrior ones and the warrior twos and the, airplane, AKA warrior three, right? Like, so you definitely want to think warrior for a Tuesday practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have Wednesday, and Wednesday is Mercury. And Mercury has to do with the intellect, our communication, our throat chakra. So a Wednesday practice could really look like a, a chanting practice, or, um, chanting mantras or words of affirmation, like really working that throat chakra. I've been in some really cool yoga classes in my years as a yogi where affirmations are a part of the flow. So even like, let's say, because sun salutations is a basic flow that a lot of people recognize, it's like with each like inhale there'd be a mantra, and the exhale there'd be a mantra, and it was like the whole practice would have maybe like the bija mantras for the chakras, or other mantras. So that could be something that could be incorporated. And I mean, even like for me, because I really do, when I practice, I really do look at what day it is. And I mean, I go even deeper. Okay, it's Sunday. Where's the sun? The sun's in Gemini, kind of thing. But let's say on a Wednesday, I'm always like, okay, I exercised my throat chakra. I did my chanting. I'm working with Mercury there. Because as I mentioned earlier, the chakras are connected to the planets.
You're giving me all sorts of ideas here. I've never even heard of a mantra flow class. What was that class called that you took? Do you remember?
So I took it twice. It was with different teachers, so it was different. The first time I remember doing it, I believe, was in Costa Rica when I was in my 500-hour yoga training. I think it was when we were doing our practicum. There were yogis from all over the world in that training. And so I particularly remember this woman was from Sweden. And we chanted mantra, like a bija mantra, for like a whole sequence. I don't know what the style was called, but I bet you could do some research and learn more. But then the other practice where I did it, which could be a familiar name to some listeners, was at the Floyd Yoga Jam in Floyd, Virginia. It's an annual yoga festival. And it was Katie Silcox, who has the Shakti school. She does the online Ayurveda trainings every year. It was her class.
Ah. Okay.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
So Wednesday, Mercury, and then Thursday, Jupiter Day.
Thursday, Jupiter Day. And Jupiter is our guru planet, or our inner guru. So Jupiter is the planet of wisdom. Jupiter is the teacher, the philosopher, because, if you relate this to, let's say, Sagittarius energy, Jupiter is about expansion. religion is associated with Jupiter, even though, we probably don't want to like get maybe so deep into that subject, but you could approach your Thursday practice as a day when you practice your prayer and devotion.
Whatever that means to you, however it looks like.
Exactly. So in the yoga tradition, it might look like japa meditation with the mala beads and, you're doing a mantra for each bead. Or maybe it's a day when you study your yoga philosophy or whatever your spiritual philosophy is. So you could approach it more from like your spiritual beliefs. So just thinking like prayer, devotion. Yeah.
Totally. So what about for a physical practice? What kind of physical practice could
I
support?
think, well, one thing to note is yoga is going to be ideal for all planets and signs. But when I think of a practice like for Thursday, yoga is very expansive. Yoga, we stretch beyond where
Yes.
we thought we would go. So you could even, I think, really any kind of practice because we're stretching,
Stretch beyond
we're
ordinary limits.
expanding.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But meditation would also be a strong practice for
Yeah.
Thursday because that, it's to some it's prayer, but it's going into that place of your inner light. So a more
Clearing
meditative,
out. Yeah. Clearing
yeah,
out to allow in. Yeah.
a more meditative but expansive practice.
And then we're on Friday now.
Friday today, right? We're talking to how Friday is Venus Day. The day of the goddess, the day of the divine feminine. So it's more like um, a practice that brings pleasure because Venus is about pleasure. This might be a day where, so part of my 500 hour, because we got to choose modules, one of the modules that I did for my 500 hour was yoga dance. So if you've ever done like a yoga dance, this could be a really ideal practice for a Friday because it's very Venus. It's very more
Very
like
Venus.
divine, feminine, like goddess
Wow.
energy, or just ecstatic dance.
And music.
Yeah, things that just bring pleasure in all ways.
Activating the senses like aromatherapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Taurus, which is one of the signs ruled by Venus, is about the five senses. And currently, Venus is in Taurus. So,
Yeah.
you could think about like Venus and Taurus or Taurus in general loves anything that has to do with the pleasure of the five senses. So I love that, bringing some aromatherapy into the yoga room.
And just talking about
Some dancer poses, right? Even just dancer pose, or
yeah.
I'm using the English words here. Just that kind of a more graceful practice.
Or sensual, like as in if you were to close your eyes and your hands become your eyes as you feel around the mat and going more inward to feel and kind of soak up your inner light, like you were saying. But speaking of energetics and the planets, no wonder why so many people just love Fridays, not because it's the end of the quote unquote work week, but it's also Venus Day, like pleasure day and enjoyment and having fun. Uh, so now we are on, that's all seven, right? Saturday through,
Yeah, so I
yeah.
started with Saturday and we end with Friday.
So then in relation to this, you mentioned the 6th, 12th house access and how we can understand our daily routines. Can you speak on that?
Yes, absolutely. So in your natal chart, if you don't know what a natal chart is or what it looks like, a natal chart is the map or blueprint of the sky at the moment of your birth. And in your natal chart, the natal chart rather, is cut up into 12 houses. And each house is connected to an area of life, starting with the self at the first house and ending in the 12th house with the house of self undoing, or the house of spirit. And so, opposite of the 12th house is the 6th house, which is the house of your daily habits, your health routines, and it's an axis. So you can't have one without the other. You have the 6th house and you have the 12th house. This is going to be the house of our mental, this is going to be the axis, rather. So these two houses of our mental health. So I find that when I talk about astro wellness, I find it's very important to especially mention these houses, because when we get to understand our 6th house, we get to understand what routines could really serve us and our mental health and our process of self-undoing. So the 6th house, it is the area of life where we have acute ailments, or where we might have our dietary and food choices. It's going to be connected to our digestion. It has a lot to do with our daily routine, our health habits, hygiene, natural therapies. It's also connected to our neurotransmitters, our gut. So a lot of it's that whole gut brain connection. Because the 6th house, the 6th sign in astrology is Virgo. So these houses have association more in a more cookie cutter sense with the 12 signs. So Virgo is a health sign. Virgo has to do with the gut in that whole, gut brain axis. So yeah, think of the 6th house as your house of hygiene. But then you have the opposite house, which is the 12th house. And that's more of that process of self-undoing. It's connected in more cookie cutter terms to the astrological sign of Pisces, which is the last sign of the zodiac, which soaks in all 12 energies into one sign and holds a lot of sensitivity. The 12th house can show us where we have chronic ailments, or where we can get where stress and overwork from our 6th house can trigger 12th house illnesses. So the 6th house is also going to point to, especially for people who have planetary placements there, like Mars, for example, it's going to show where you overdo as well, like overwork or you like overdo things. And so that's where it can trigger that 12th house illness. The 12th house is also associated with hospitals and institutions. I also, like to look at the 12th house as just kind of more like the meditation room, or that space we go in for more quiet solitude. It's a healing house. But illness in itself is associated with the 12th house experience. This would have the most to do with the mental health because, again, that 6th house routine, whether it's good or bad, it's going to manifest in that 12th house. So if you have those good 6th house daily habits, it's going to help with your mental health. But if you don't, that's when a lot of these mental health stuff and withdrawal can come up. This is because I'm kind of speaking of this kind of more from that astro wellness or medical astrology, which I'm not a doctor. I'd like to know I'm not a doctor. But this is fun stuff to understand about our life. It's also the house where it's hard to diagnose a disease because things are hidden in the 12th house. The 12th house and the 6th house have everything to do with immunity, especially the 12th house. The 12th house is our immune system. And it's also, the 12th house is our intuition and our dreams. So it's all connected. And this is a really important house to get to know so that you can, live well.
Mm-hmm. This is part of why astrology is so fascinating and useful and practical, because it can help shed light and point you in a direction to things that you weren't aware of, or what kind of habits and disciplines do work for you versus maybe what you've been doing that it no longer serves you. But on an aside, do you give readings for health reasons, like people struggling with mental health, or maybe even their children, and what their predispositions could be, and habits or practices that could serve people?
I do these readings when people ask. So it's not something that I'm just going to automatically go into.
Right.
Because again, one, I'm not a doctor. I am not a, medical astrologer. I am a student of medical astrology. So, I'm a professional astrologer, but it is nice and helpful to have this information. And I have worked with clients. I'll never forget one woman had some health issues, and this conversation about her 6th house, 12th house, and the medical stuff just kind of came out organically. And we really uncovered some deep stuff with her health. That it was a Zoom reading, and her mouth, her jaw was just dropped. And she says, "Oh, this was worth." And I mean, it was like the beginning of the reading. She's like, "Oh, I got my money's worth just right now hearing about that." So it can really shine a lot of light. It can really enlighten a lot of people and be super helpful. But I feel like I especially try and be careful how I'm approaching it. I do advertise on my website Astrowellness readings, and that's where I'll have people. I just did one of these recently. They tell me prior to the reading that they want this Astrowellness reading, because what I do is I come up with a personalized report based on your, natal dispositions, especially your sun, your moon, and your rising, which are your top 3 important placements. And I'll say, okay, with these placements, this is where you want to focus. This might be where you are challenged. And I'll give a whole report on like activities and lifestyle practices and things that are safe for me to put into the report that don't, aren't obviously like medical related. And yeah, I mean, like it's amazing, to hear from some of those clients that I've done it for, like, wow, this really makes sense.
Taking a quick pause before we dive back into today's episode, I'm sharing with you something I've been deeply inspired by recently, something born straight from my heart. I created a space for women who give so much, yet can feel the quiet ache of not feeling seen, heard, or truly loved. That's why I created Seen, Heard, and Loved Women's Online Retreat, a sacred space for us to come together in sisterhood, to be witnessed, nourished, and deeply held. This is your space to come home to yourself, to feel the belonging and love your heart, your innermost part of yourself has been longing for. And here's something special. I've created a free gift for you, 5 rituals to nourish your body, mind, and heart. If you'd like to receive it, simply send me an email. You'll find my address in the show notes, or you can also visit the website, also posted in the show notes. And reach out to me for this free gift. I'll send it directly to you with love. Early bird registration is now open, and when you reserve your seat before a week or so, 1 to 2 weeks before the actual event, which is October 18th, you will receive a special discounted rate. Spaces are limited, so if your heart is saying yes, don't think twice, sister. This is for you. I feel a deep urgency that this space is needed for us right here, right now. Please look in the show notes for the links to learn more about this online retreat, and reach out if you have any questions or comments. I'm here for you. You are worthy of being seen, of being heard, and being deeply loved. There's a seat waiting just for you.
To my life. So yeah, to answer your question.
Yeah, and talking about readings too, and what you said, the woman, like, right off the bat, how she's like, "Oh, just what you said got my money's worth." Mary Beth has done readings for me too, and our very first one, everything you were saying to me already like clicked and stoked the fire within me that I was looking for. Even some exact words you spelled out in sentences, exact words that I've like already been spinning around in my mind. Like, I love astrologers in the sense I like you and my favorite astrologer on like a podcast, Molly McCord. I'll link her too. But both of you have like this cosmic cheerleader vibe, and I'm like, yes, this is what I want to hear. It's gonna support me, and it's making my life like find this energetic flow. Getting astrology readings is totally worth it if you're looking for something in particular that you need shed light on. And of course, Mary Beth's links will be listed in the show notes too. And she does Zoom meetings, so you don't even have to live in her area. You can be anywhere in the world. And she's fantastic. Obviously, I think highly of you because I invited you on Serenade to the Soul. So
Yeah, I'm thankful. Thank you. Yeah, and I mean, there's going to be those readings that we might say something as astrologers that aren't so good, but it can be so helpful. And it's not then, that's where I was like talking about earlier. I mentioned Vedic astrology. It's like how it's approached, how it's said.
Just as in life, right?
Right. It's life. And it's good. I mean, I have some things going on by transits in my life that, if I didn't know that these were transits going on in my life, I would go crazy. I would go insane. I'd be like, oh my God, and it's like, so it's helpful to know when these periods of our life or transits are happening that aren't so positive, because they don't have to be so negative either.
No.
It's just helpful when that thing happens, like things that even happened to me today, and I can say, I know why that happened.
Yes.
That makes sense, and then I can deal with it better.
For sure, yes.
I can let it go easier.
It helps dealing with the intensity and emotions. When you say that, it makes me think, when was the last Scorpio? There was a Scorpio full moon, I want to say like in May or April.
Yes, it was in May, and it was very intense.
It was so intense for me. I hadn't it was a very intense day, and by the end, like literally hour by hour, I was feeling more and more like, oh my God, there's so much watery intensity. And then at the end of the day, my son broke my crystal bowl. And something about the sound of the bowl and then seeing it broken, I wasn't mad at him, but that sparked like a tsunami of flood and tears. I mean, it just came out. And if I didn't know it was a Scorpio full moon, I would have been like, what the heck is wrong with me right now?
Yeah, no, that one was intense. That one was one that I had to recover from. And, That's definitely,
Likewise.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
one that there were some things that came my way during that time, and I was so resilient and just was like, okay, I accept this. And it's not to say it wasn't hard or I didn't like it,
Uh-huh.
but it made it so much easier to frame things
Exactly. Yeah.
and
And
own and empower myself and not think
empowerment.
that,
Yeah.
like it's the end of the world.
Yeah, turning it into something that empowers you. So, yeah, and because I knew that, I was like, if this feels like a tsunami to me, but I'm seeing as an energetic cleanse of debris, whatever's blocking my pipelines. Like it flooded out. I chose not to see it as something that, like what's wrong with me? Why am I so emotional right now? But as like a needed cleanse that is that's so like tsunami was the best way I could
Yeah.
describe all the intensity. But yeah, to frame and to help empower and to understand, and then eventually all things change. Then another, more pleasant and easier aspect will
We had
happen.
this Sagittarius full moon more recently,
Yeah.
like last week. And, it was definitely a lot more, definitely a lighter energy
Yeah.
for, yeah.
So, speaking of this, how can we work with the transits and other timing techniques in our daily lives or in certain seasons?
Yeah. So when you get an astrology reading and the astrologer gives you your copy of your natal chart, um, or you find a copy of your natal chart on your own, and you can understand, because understanding the transits can be like next level for a lot of people.
Yes, yes.
And so I would say the best place to start with understanding, well, two good places to start with understanding transits is one, find out your rising sign. Find out, it's also called the ascendant. In order to find out your rising sign or your ascendant, you need an approximate time of birth.
Oh,
Um,
it doesn't need to be exact?
it does need to be exact. It
Oh,
needs to be
okay.
approximate. Yeah, you
Okay.
need an exact time of birth. Because, maybe you were born at a time when the rising sign was about to change or when something
Mm-hmm.
else was about to shift. The more exact the time, the more accurate the reading. And
Mm-hmm.
why I start with this is because your rising sign or your ascendant is your true horoscope. Okay. So let's say you are a Cancer rising. You're ruled by the moon. So the moon is a Cancer rising's planetary ruler of their chart. I like to call it, from my studies, the captain of the ship. Okay, so that planetary ruler is the captain of the ship. And whatever is going on with that planetary ruler in the chart or with that ascendant rising sign is going to be a main energy, let's say, in your life. There's always going to be planets coming and kind of showing up to be, captain in training one year, or like times when planets are, really highlighted. But as far as like the natal chart and those basics go, your rising sign is your true horoscope. So let's say that Cancer rising is a Virgo sun, and they've been reading the Virgo horoscope their whole life, and it doesn't make sense to them. Well, that's because you're reading the wrong horoscope. You got to read the horoscope of your rising sign, because not only is it going to give you insight to what's going on with the ruling planet in your chart, but it's going to give you insight into transits. So that's like the astrological weather that's moving around our chart. It's going to give you insight into those transits that are impacting your self and because the rising sign has to do with the first house, which is the self. So you're just going to get more insight into what transits are really
Yeah.
dominating. in your
I
life.
didn't even think about that. So, for example, my sun sign is Cancer, my rising is Pisces. From what I understand, what you just said, to read. So, for me, if I were to read a Pisces horoscope on a given day, that would be more accurate than my sun sign in Cancer. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you play with it,
Mm-hmm.
but yes, in the sense that it's Jupiter, and
Mm-hmm.
then in modern rulership Neptune. So you have two rulers, but Jupiter's really like your main ruler in
Mm-hmm.
more of like that traditional sense. That horoscope would tell you what's going on with Jupiter and Neptune and
Mm-hmm.
how it's affecting you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is going to be the more simple way. I think, there's definitely more advanced ways, but I don't think we're probably ready in some sense to go there because people would really need to get with me or a professional
Right.
astrologer to
Mm-hmm.
understand some of those other things. But so there's that way of understanding transits. Another way to understand the transits is just by understanding the moon because the sun we're on a 365-day cycle with, but the moon changes signs every 2.5 days. Yes, a Cancer rising ruled by the moon, they're going to be, or Cancer suns and moons also be more affected by the changes in the tides and the changes in the moon, right? But it can be a helpful basic understanding of understanding transits. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, where's the moon? And this full moon that we're talking about in Scorpio, you could have also really looked at, well, where's Scorpio in your chart?
Mm-hmm.
And what area of life is getting intensified
Mm-hmm.
with this full moon in Scorpio?
Mm-hmm.
So, like the full moon, the new moon, full moon, especially as we've talked about, has that intensity to it. It's helpful to understand how a full moon is going to affect me personally.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's in this sign of Scorpio, but I'm a Sagittarius rising, so Scorpio is my 12th house.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a full moon in Scorpio in the area of life of self-undoing. There was
Mm-hmm.
some self-undoing going
Yeah.
on there.
Yeah.
And thankfully with my spiritual practices, because the 12th house is a very spiritual house, I was able to understand it and make sense of it. It's not to say it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't intense,
Mm-hmm.
but I was able to understand it and move on a lot
Totally.
easier.
Yeah.
So hopefully that makes sense and just at least starting with the moon. But
Yeah.
ideally you start with getting your rising sign.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then I'll link to in the show notes. Most people use astro.com, correct? Or do you know of another website that offers
So
cast?
I use astro.com. I don't use the apps that a lot of people use because I'm like, I know how to do this, but
Uh-huh.
I do a lot of readings where people mention that they have the CoStar app. So I believe you can definitely type in and get, some information there.
Mm-hmm.
I think Cafe Astrology is one.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
It's a great resource in general. I really
Mm-hmm.
like that one. Um, but yes, astro.com is what a lot of people use. Even professional astrologers like myself like
Mm-hmm.
astro.com because
It's my
it
favorite. Yeah.
it has
It
everything
has everything
for everybody. Yeah.
for every. Yep.
Just got to know how to navigate it.
Yeah. But it does also have like it has like ones that you can click on that will show you a little bit if you don't
That's a good
know.
one for
Yeah.
beginners, especially
Yeah, a
because
good
you're
one for
kind of
beginners.
getting, yeah.
Hmm. I forget what
Uh,
that category is called. Do you remember what that
well,
category
there's
is
a
called?
lot of like options that use the word click in it.
Ah, okay.
So I think that one is Astro Click Portrait or something like that.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that
And
rings a
that
bell.
one does the reading more like like a short description and
It's
then you can
basic.
say,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's definitely a place to start as well.
But definitely that book that we were talking about way back, The Only Astrology Book You'll Ever Need, really does a great job. It was my foundation to understanding the archetypes and how they that influenced my life. It's a great book.
Yeah, and I have the older edition, and I recently, a couple years ago, got the newer edition. And
Oh, I didn't even know.
the older edition I have, it's like I'm looking at it on my bookshelf right now. It has no back cover, no front cover, like it's falling apart. Because when you're learning something and you're just
And that's a
using
good, it's a good
yes,
book when it's falling apart.
and you got a lot out of it. I have a couple of astrology books like that
Yes,
I learned from. Like
yeah.
the first one, I ended up tossing it, but that one and then the third one, I've had to get new copies of.
Yeah.
But I was going to say with that book, the only astrology book you'll ever need, the updated one is even better because it has more information than I got when I first. I mean, that I started ripping apart that book like in 2001. So, yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely.
I was ripping mine apart in 2008, I believe. So I don't know what edition that was, but
Yeah, I'm not
yeah.
sure. Yeah, you might have had the older one too, because the newer one's real thick, and the one I had wasn't that thick.
Oh, okay. Yeah, mine was pretty thick, so I think it was the newer
Yeah.
edition. Let's transition to talking about Chiron, the wounded healer, and Hygieia, the goddess of hygiene.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so these are two mythological characters or asteroids that we can look at in our natal chart. So they're not planets. They're planetary bodies or, asteroids that do have just as much of an effect, sometimes often seen as maybe even more than a planet. So we can't, we can't disregard the power of what these dwarf planets like Pluto is now called, and let's say like asteroids can do for us. So on the topic of the sixth house, 12th house, Astrowellness, as I call it, these mythological characters, or, particular here, Chiron. Chiron he's a wounded healer. So in our natal chart, the location of Chiron can show us where we have our core wounds. And these are places where we may have blocked our capacity to have any self-empathy or forgiveness for ourselves. It is the part of us that is so deeply wounded that it's like that excruciating pain of being human. And the only, it's said in the whole story of Chiron, the best way to work with or heal this pain is to be a source of healing for other people.
So true.
So where you have Chiron in your natal chart is the gift of healing that you have to give to humanity. And I always love to share, because I definitely feel as though I've been doing my Chiron work.
Yeah.
I have Chiron in Aries in the fifth house, and the fifth house is the area of life around children. So I'm not going to get into my whole story, but I know that Twist Kids Yoga is my Chiron healing gift that I have to give to the world. So being that that's how we met, I just wanted to, share that with you.
Yeah.
And so the thing with Chiron is just like, let's say the moon takes 28 days to come back around. like it's like on a 28-day cycle, right? The sun, 365 days, Saturn, 28 and a half to 30 years that it takes for these planets, especially to come back around to where they were at the moment of our birth.
Mm-hmm.
But an energy like Chiron takes 49 to 50 years to come back around to its placement in our birth chart. So it's at this age of our life that we really have to we go through like a deep process, an initiation into that process of the wounded healer. It's that time in our life where Chiron comes back to where it was when we were born, and we are faced with the pain of, we're always faced with the pain of being human.
Mm-hmm.
But in this period of time, we're faced with it in a way that it's time that we work on that healing process within ourselves so that we can then move into being that source of healing, especially, in our elder years. It's really the Chiron return is that initiation really into being an elder. And that's why I always find it so beautiful to see and hear stories of people who really step into the role of a healer at that age of their life. I don't, want to disregard anybody younger on the healing journey, because I myself, I've been on this healing journey since my early 20s. Since I started yoga at 22 and always knew I wanted to be a healer and have been a yoga teacher and an astrologer. But I do feel that I can recognize, because I am turning 50 this year, and I am
So
currently
crazy.
in my
You look like you're 30.
Thank you. I am in my Chiron return.
Yeah.
And I'm actually in the peak of my Chiron return right now. So it's definitely like sitting right there where it was when I was born. And so I've definitely been in that whole process. And so, Chiron is really definitely where we have to learn to find that compassion towards ourselves that we spoke about earlier. So if you have your natal chart and you look at your natal chart, you can recognize where Chiron is in your chart by looking for the symbol that looks like a key. And it's, like they say, like nothing's a coincidence in the universe, right? Like the key symbol of Chiron can be the key into your chart and understanding your healing journey.
Just like there's a quote, like the wound is also the place where the light comes in. How does that quote go again?
Yeah, or like the crack. Like there's the image of that, what is it, like that bowl? What is it, like a Japanese practice?
Yeah, kintsugi bowl, yeah.
Yes, and so that is definitely a good example of Chiron.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So it's that pain that some say in the astrology world that we can't heal, and that our only healing is to be a source of healing for others. But then there's also the beliefs that, yes, we can heal it. It's just one of those things that we're always showing up for. Yeah.
For sure. And Hygieia, how does she relate?
So Hygieia, just as she sounds, Hygieia is the goddess of health or hygiene. The story that I have here about Hygieia is she's an ancient goddess and the modern muse of health. She is also considered the Kundalini goddess and a goddess of miraculous healing. It is she who collected the toxic blood of the beheaded Medusa and turned it into a medicine so powerful it could bring the dead back to life. Within us, we all have a Hygieia that represents pre-existing healing power and skills that show themselves anytime we can drop deeply within. Now, she was one of Asclepius's 5 daughters. And Asclepius is a hero and the god of medicine in ancient Greek mythology. He was the son of Apollo, and he represents the healing aspect of the medical arts. It is said that it was Asclepius who was Chiron's teacher. With Hygieia in our chart, it's going to show us, where we can do more of that preventative work, for our health. What's interesting about Hygieia and Asclepius is back to the stuff that I didn't really get into about the medical field and how there's different symbolism still there today that is connected to, medical astrology. One of them is the symbol. I never know if I'm going to say this right. Caduceus, Caduceus, Caduceus. And this is a symbol that contains 2 snakes entwined around the staff of the magician healer. So it's that symbol that's really the symbol of the medical field. Okay. And it's actually that symbol that is connected to Hygieia and her father, Asclepius. It's actually her father's symbol, rather, is the rod of Asclepius and has only 1 snake. Hygieia, there's a lot of connection with her in the 6th house. She is preventative medicine, hygiene, anything that would have to do with nutritionists, naturopaths, herbalists, and all healers in general. She has to do with the process of purification and cleansing of the body and soul, and also represents where we can potentially go deep into ourselves and heal on all levels.
I love that. So
Yes.
I believe my Hygieia is Virgo.
I think because I know I pulled it up in your last meeting. Yeah. That's a good place for Hygieia because she is connected so closely to the sign of Virgo. So it would be that you would have a more natural placement of what Hygieia represents because Virgo has to do with this too. Preventative medicine, purification of the body and mind. Yeah.
Yeah. And then also, so the charts is like on astro.com for those of you who are interested in finding out your signs, you would just have to, when you go to the chart, you just have to specifically click on these individual asteroids, to add them to your picture, correct? Or
Yeah, well, Chiron automatically pops up. Hygieia, you actually, if you're on astro.com, you scroll down and there's like a yellow box to the right of the screen and you type in the number 10. So to get the asteroids, I mean, there is actually a box where you can go through like the whole alphabet, but it's long. I mean, there's like thousands of asteroids in that data. So getting to know the number. So she's asteroid goddess 10. So it's easier when I know the number and then I just type it in the box and it comes up. Because I don't know Asclepius's number, but I do know that I do know where it is in my chart and it makes sense. Yeah.
So, in regard to like Astrowellness and medicinal aspects of astrology, how can we use our our natal Chirons and Hygieias, like weaving them together to help us in our healing process and figuring out what best serves us.
So if I'm hearing it correctly, like how do we use it to our
Like,
like our advantage or
Do you use them to like as a team when you do a reading about health or just understanding your own self and others?
So I
Or
definitely will pull it up, like if I'm doing that Astro Wellness report or that Astro
mm-hmm,
Wellness reading.
mm-hmm,
And so where like Chiron placement's going to show the client where they have that deep pain, that
mm-hmm,
that wound that they can use to also, help heal others. They can then look to their Hygieia and help to get to know and understand what sort of things they could do to help prevent, like as a preventative medicine. Like I
mm-hmm,
can think of mine, for example. I actually have my Hygieia is conjunct my moon sign, which
mm,
is said that when you have your Hygieia next to or an aspect to an illuminary, like the sun or the moon, that you're definitely a person who would approach your health more holistically.
mm-hmm.
And I mean, I just learned about Hygieia in the last 5 to 7 years. And
Mm-hmm.
I can, the moon has to do with our emotions, our emotional process. And so when my dad died, that's an emotional thing,
Yeah.
right? Um, it was just natural because this is the part of us that's going to come natural to us as like a way of, having good hygiene or preventative
Mm-hmm.
practices. So there was just this, nobody ever taught me. It just made sense to me to approach my healing. The first thing I started to do besides the yoga, but I think I even started it before the yoga, was just start to like eat well,
Yeah.
right? Like we all know to eat well. We all know that that's like a preventative thing. Because I had an intuition about cleansing my body.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I read the description of my Hygieia, it talked a lot about like, because my Hygieia is in Cancer, and Cancer is all about, nourishment and
Mm-hmm. And the
nurturing
stomach.
the stomach. Yes, good. The stomach and, just like, yeah, nourishing the body, right? And so it was just
Mm-hmm.
like a hunch for me
Mm-hmm.
to really like start with that.
Mm-hmm.
Which, of course, again, that can apply to all of us, but just how I had that was just like a hunch. And it was also interesting how it said in there with my placement, I think it was the house that it's in, or maybe it was the sign, that I would live near a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've always lived near a hospital.
Oh, that's so
I've
interesting.
always lived pretty much for the most
Yeah.
part, always lived within a good distance of like walking or a short drive to a hospital.
Yeah.
I remember doing a reading for somebody on her Hygieia, and she was diabetic, and there was something in the description, I can't even remember what it was, that was so on point to her and her process with her diabetes. She was one of those that her mouth was just like,
Mm-hmm.
jaw dropped. So it's just going to be that placement that just gives us like that intuitive hunch of what we can do
Mm-hmm.
to, prevent
Mm-hmm.
disease.
Yeah. And or the skills you can use to apply to help the healing process and others heal. Yes.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Looking at somebody's chart.
Yeah. Oh, I know we could talk about astrology forever. There's just so much wonderful information. But I do want to wrap it up with asking you some questions.
Sure.
Um, So let's go trace it back to yoga. What is your current favorite style of yoga? Or what style serves you the best? Or do you mix it up?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I started with Ashtanga yoga as my practice. I wasn't one of those Ashtanga yogis who did like the 6 day a week,
Mm-hmm.
5 a.m. type practice, but it was like, you know, the class that I would go to
Mm-hmm.
a couple times a week. I was in college. I did that practice for a long time. I never thought I could ever give up on a practice like Ashtanga because I started yoga when I was just turned 22 years old. And by the time I got to 30, I realized if I want to keep doing yoga the way I'm doing yoga, I'm going to have to switch it up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to be open to, because I was like, nope, I only like this sequence.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I mean, like I'm almost 50, so my practice has definitely changed and evolved. And where I do like to mix it up, and I do appreciate approaching it how I can with the days of the week,
Mm-hmm.
I will say that I love slow, nourishing, gentle
Mm-hmm.
practices, whether it's a slow flow vinyasa, a restorative practice, a yin practice.
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate those. I mean, basic beginners. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I go to a studio in Wilmington when I'm there, as I'm there often, and I love to go to their basics because
Mm-hmm.
I'm just at that place where slower is better for
Yeah.
me.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I started off with Hot 26 and that was all I would ever do. And then eventually mixed up my styles too. And I feel like the older you get or the more you're in yoga, maybe not for everyone, but slowing down is also just as powerful as like sweating it out or getting really intense about it. And it's just about intention and what serves your body. And yeah, I'm definitely going to explore this day of the week energy and help me personalize my practices too. What is
I
your
especially
favorite?
well, let me just say real quick, I especially love with the day of the week practice like on a Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't feel like doing that Tuesday practice as I described earlier, I do it
Uh-huh.
because it's like you got to push yourselves,
Yeah,
right?
because
So
the
that's the
energy
day.
supports it. Yeah.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
the day that I know that's going to support me
Mm-hmm.
pushing myself rather than on like a Monday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
for
yeah.
sure.
Anyway, what were you going to say?
I mean, this changes all the time, of course, but what is your current favorite pose?
Gosh, my favorite current pose, maybe legs up the wall.
Ah, so
I've
good.
been trying to visit that more lately. I mean, I've always loved tree pose and dancer pose. I've always
Uh-huh.
loved the balancing poses.
Mm-hmm.
I always loved pigeon. Um, because it's the hips and I'm
Mm-hmm.
Sagittarius rising and
Mm,
trigger
makes
of the
sense.
hips. So, but lately I've been appreciating legs up the wall.
Mm. Do you have a posture in mind that like you hated at first and then you grew to love?
Um, yeah, I can't really think well, I don't really like downward dog that much because I had, and the only reason really why, and of course grown to love it, it's not because I don't like doing it. It's because in my early days of yoga, I'm double jointed in my
Yeah.
arms.
Mm-hmm.
And I would always be like the person that the teacher or the teacher and the assistant would go up to and obviously like try and correct for a good reason, but what they never could like I could never get them to understand is my arms aren't going to straighten out. They're
Mm-hmm.
always going to have,
Mm-hmm.
like the distortion that they
Yeah.
have. So I never really liked doing downward facing dog in a group class because the teacher, like I had this experience at an Ashtanga yoga studio in Boulder, Colorado when I lived there years ago. And that's what happened. They all came over. There was like 4 of them and they were all up on and around me and my arms. And honestly, like I don't go to a lot of group classes anymore because of things like that. Like
Yeah.
there was just like, just leave me alone.
Uh-huh.
I want, yes, thank you. I want to be safe, but I also just want to breathe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's very interesting. Like there's a portion of the population who loves adjustments and want to be told to like, oh, fix me, you know. And then there's a portion that's like, leave me alone. I don't want to be touched. I don't want to be put on the spot. So as teachers, it's important to be mindful of like the energetics of the students in your classes. And I remember talking about this story when I was going through kids yoga teacher training, because I'm also double jointed in my elbows.
Okay, I think now I do
Yeah.
remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I've had to do is learn to like wrap my muscles around my bones to help support, not like, yeah, this is amazing. The amazing thing about yoga is you understand, you work with what you came into life with, right? And there's no such thing as a perfect body. And some things serve you, some things don't, and things change over time.
Like
Yeah.
astrology, like
Like astrology,
astrology. You have
yes.
this map that can show you karmas that you just are going to continue to have to face
Oh,
and deal with.
yes.
Some you're going to be able
Yes.
to clear and some maybe not.
Yeah. To wrap it up, so what, like, as an astrologer, what are are there any current transits that stand out to you, that you think like we all can be mindful of? Just like how we're talking about when we understand the energetics and energetic weather of what we're going through in this year, 2025, maybe even into 26. Are there any standout aspects and transits that you can point us to?
Yeah, well, coming up in the next couple of weeks, the planet Uranus, which is the planet of shock and sudden change and disruption, it's currently in Taurus at the 29th degree and moving into Gemini in a couple weeks, somewhere around July 8th. Um, and so that is one of the 3 outer planets. So we have Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus. And we've been experiencing all 3 either having recently shift signs or getting ready to shift signs. So something to really think about with 2025. And also, I'm not a numerologist, but I do like to kind of
Mhm.
know some numerology.
Me too.
2025 is also a 9 year.
Hmm.
So this is definitely a year of a lot of changes and a
Hmm.
lot of, we're stepping in to a lot of new beginnings. Uranus will be switching signs in a couple of weeks. One to really think about, actually, that I wanted to be prepared to share with you guys is a transit with Neptune and Saturn. So Neptune, one of the outer planets, recently switched into Aries from Pisces after it had been in Pisces for the last 14 years, because these outer planets spend a long time in these signs, shifted from Pisces to Aries. And not long after that, Saturn shifted from Pisces to Aries. So currently, from May of 2025 until March of 2027, so I'm kind of giving an even more broader, thing to think about, there will be what's called a conjunction of Saturn and Neptune. And a conjunction happens when they're in the same sign. The last time Saturn and Neptune were conjunct was in 1989 and 1990. So it wouldn't have been in Aries. It would have been, back then, it would have been in Capricorn. But when this conjunction happens, it happens about every 36 to 37 years. And the effects of it can be very noticeable throughout history. While Saturn is the planet that brings structure and form to our reality, Neptune is the planet that dissolves and blurs the boundaries between the realms. So it's, it distorts reality. It can bring confusion to reality. Um, so like an example of this transit is the deconstruction of the Berlin Wall and collapse of the Soviet Empire happened during the last conjunction of Saturn and Neptune. That is a perfect example of how this alignment can bend time, because Saturn has to do with time, and destabilize a system. Because remember, we're dissolving illusions. Saturn has to do a lot with systems, erase boundary lines, and shatter man-made constructs. While it is common with these two planets when they come together to have a sort of feeling of ascension, there is also, this thing where there's very little that can save us from our own personal destruction as Aries reigns through this karmic meeting. So Aries is ruled by Mars. Aries is all about, action and going head on. And Aries, it's temperamental, right? Like if you have some Aries in your chart, you've got some temper.
Yeah.
And so this is like a placement with Aries of like bold, new, courageous beginnings. So we're going to see these things dissolve and these systems fail. But we also have to like have that Aries courage and bravery to step forward into something new. And Saturn's karma, right? So, it's going to have karma that can potentially bring, and we see this stuff unfold all the time on the world stage. Aries energy can bring conflict. It can bring war. It can, because it's like that, that fiery, fiery energy. Aries starts the war, Scorpio fights the war, kind of. So know that when it comes to Mars ruled planets. So through this karmic meeting, bringing conflict, war, and unrest to both the inner and outer worlds. The fight for freedom is real. And, changes are upon us.
Yeah.
So that's one to think about because that's happening currently. While at the same time, as I mentioned, these other outer planets either moving back and forth, shifting, or getting ready to shift. So I know for me personally, I am very much feeling this Taurus Uranus at the 29th degree because it's in opposition to my sun sign, Scorpio. And I have definitely been experiencing some disruptive things. I know we won't have time to share it, but like even something that happened today at the post office, it's just like, okay, that's one of those things that I'm like, okay, I'm accepting of it.
Yes.
I can breathe through it. But something to think about too, with Uranus moving from Taurus, this earth-based sign, where we've seen over the last 7 years changes around the way, the way we live on Earth. More people wanting to kind of like, go off the grid or downsize and, more minimalist lifestyle stuff because, that's like working with our earthy resources. We've seen changes and innovations around money and currency, like the whole cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. With Uranus moving into Gemini and Pluto currently having moved into Aquarius, two air signs, AI's just going to get stronger.
Oh, yeah. I feel the past week, especially, AI has been all over my technology, like just the promotion or the ads I'm getting about AI. And it's funny that you're mentioning this because, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
And I recently read something where we are, especially with Uranus moving into Gemini, moving into such artificial intelligence and artificial living, right? Like this inorganic way that's almost like agenda, that's almost like being pushed on us, transhumanism. I read where the last 7 years with Uranus and Taurus, this, more earth element sign, has really tried to more so prepare us to get more grounded with the earth and to be more connected to nature. Because the more we have learned to be connected with the earth and nature, the more we'll be able to distinguish what's real and what's not real.
So
Because
true.
AI is just going to make everything seem so believable.
Yeah.
And I mean, I even had an experience early this week, and, very much could be, yoga tunes us in so much and can make us very sensitive to the realms. And I had a thing happen to me recently this week that, I mean, it was just in the human form at the grocery store, but like it felt like it could, I don't know, it was weird. It felt like it could almost evolve into like it's I can't explain it, I can't put it into words, but in my brain it felt like I was like in a moment of an evolutionary process that could go either to the left to a more organic understanding of life or to the right to a more artificial understanding, like AI. And so I was just like whoa, like I don't know. Again, I can only make sense of it internally, but I think it's just important because I am on my phone a lot to just continue with my yoga practice, continue to go out in nature, do my grounding practices because things are getting weird.
Things are going to change. Yeah. So
Things are definitely changing
for all of us to stay connected to our planet and to grounding is just to have those healthy grounding practices to prepare us where we're evolving to as it relates to AI. And these outer planet aspects are really about like the whole of us at large. It's not about individuals and stuff, right? It's a collective society.
It's collective.
We're moving into change, especially you said from May 25 to March 27, maybe daily rhythms and how we live life is going to change.
Well, yeah, that's that Saturn Neptune conjunction happening then, but definitely between now and 2027, collectively, even in other, understandings of things, not just astrology, but human design, which I'm not an expert on at all, but there are literal shifts happening now and taking us into a new paradigm, a new, a new energy.
New energetics,
Yeah.
So exciting times. No, like if things are confusing or unstable or unpredictable, it's just the energetic weather and we'll get through it. And on the other side, it'll be a new world, right?
Yeah, and that's why I love like astrology and yoga because they're two very old ancient practices and I fully believe that because we're moving into such inorganic changes and times, it's these ancient tools and practices that we need in order to stay connected, like fully like organic, because I'm all about staying organically connected. I haven't, jumped on board to some of the chat. What is that? Chat GPT. I don't use that. And my friends were recently encouraging me, and I'm trying to keep thinking for myself.
Yes. Yeah, me too. I haven't leaned into it. I've recently started hearing more and more about it, but I'm trying to keep things simple and to myself. Yeah. But Mary Beth, such a pleasure to have you on Serenade to the Soul. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, experience, and your amazing energy. Do check out her links in the show notes. You won't regret of reading. I promise you. It is, if you are looking for some guidance and clarity, check her out. Thank you for sharing time and space with me today. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. Your support helps keep this podcast alive. And together, we thrive. I'll meet you here next Thursday. May your week be abundant and blessed. In the sound of Om, we say everything.